Hey, my friend, welcome back. I just want to apologize ahead of time. I do have landscapers doing a bit of work outside, so if there's a little bit of noise in the background, I'm sorry. It'll go away for a while and possibly come back here and there throughout this module. But I want to crank this out for you so that you're not stuck at the previous module. So I apologize in advance, but let's dive in. All right, welcome back to A Beginner's Guide to Internet Marketing. This is part 2, and we're going to be discussing the topic of a trustworthy web presence. So, what is a trustworthy web presence? Well, these days, when a new prospect hears about or encounters your brand, they'll likely Google you, or they'll search around for mentions of your brand online somewhere, maybe on a social media platform. And a trustworthy web presence ensures that when someone does decide to search your business or product name on major search engines and social platforms, what they find is accurate and compelling proof that your business is legit and what you offer is of value. It's extremely important that you control the image of your brand by developing and maintaining a trustworthy web presence so that new prospects can feel confident buying from you and all the customers can feel confident referring you to their friends and family. So what are the elements of a trustworthy web presence? Well, first off, you need a good website. And the website has to clearly illustrate who's behind the company. It should provide proof and transparency around your products and services. And the information should be easy to find. There should also be clear contact information and any links with any associations you may be involved with, or something called trust marks, which is when you show things like BBB accreditation or site security scans or anything like that. And these are things you don't really need to worry about, so I'm not going to go deep into all the different trust marks. But basically, the concept is if you're part of something where people will identify the logo or symbol or the association that you're with as being something that means you have integrity and value or some level of extra security, then those symbols should be on your website. Now, Google My Business is another major thing that pretty much every business should have. Whether you have a local offering or not, you should have a Google My Business listing. And it should be accurate and complete, and it should have positive reviews on it if possible. A Google My Business listing is very powerful because Google will obviously favor showing that to people if they believe it's relevant. And it becomes actually a pop-out on the side of a search bar or directly underneath the advertisements at the top of a mobile search feed. And we'll go into more details with things like that and examples later on, and we'll go through how to build a good Google My Business thing in our strategic parts of the course. Right now, we're just going over concepts. The other thing you want is directory listings. So wherever your competition is found, that's where you want to be. And if there's any other relevant directories that you can get a free listing in, or it has a high volume, it's worth paying for a listing in. It's important to be there. It's important to have up-to-date information. If you can get positive reviews and comments on there, if the platform takes them, that's important. And it's got to be branded. You got to have your logo and photos and website address, proper phone number, hours of operation, descriptions, all that kind of stuff. Everything's got to be properly claimed, and you got to keep a list of this somewhere because it's really easy to forget that you have all these listings. And if you change something with your business, like your hours, or you add another location, or you change your phone number, or anything happens, it's really easy to forget to update them, and then you look kind of bad if someone finds you through the wrong channel, right? Another important component is a solid social media presence. So you should be found on at least one major network, such as Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or LinkedIn or something like that. You should have a branded and complete profile. Again, if it takes reviews, there should be positive reviews. You should have a healthy count of followers, and you should be posting fairly frequently. I mean, at least you shouldn't have things referencing the upcoming Christmas special when it's August or something, or partway through the year. Make sure things are up to date, right? So preferably you want your posts on these social platforms, or at least the one key social platform you concentrate on, to have some kind of engagement, and we'll go over like what that is and things in a minute. The other thing is business owner profiles on LinkedIn are really, really good to have. So the owners and operators of the business should be listed on the company's website. And the individuals should have LinkedIn profiles that they actively maintain and that show their affiliation with the business. A lot of the time, people will look up who's behind a business, and then if they go Google the name of that person, or they go to LinkedIn and type in the name of that person, that LinkedIn profile should show up. It should show that they are associated with the business and have a nice professional profile that they could potentially connect with and interact with if necessary. It's important to do that. It's something that people just expect these days, and a lot of people just haven't started to do for their businesses. So it only takes a few minutes. LinkedIn's free to set up a profile on, so it's worth doing. Now, we're going to go over some different factors that are really important to make sure you understand, make sure you're demonstrating, make sure you're taking advantage of everywhere in your web presence. And when I'm talking about your web presence, I'm talking about everywhere that you have a profile for your business or content for your business, from your business or for your business on the internet. So one of the most important things here is proof. And there are several types of proof indicators. And without at least a few of them, your ability to convince new prospects to take any kind of action that involves money or a serious commitment of time will be very hard. So one type is case studies, and they demonstrate that you've gotten some results and the process that you got those results through. Reviews are also very important, obviously, and they should demonstrate that you have helped previous customers and they were extremely satisfied with what you offer. And a good review will actually contain the customer's name and a description of exactly what you helped them with and the value they received, not just, they were great, enjoyed them or something like that, right? I liked working with this company. You don't want generic things like that. You want people to really, explain, what they felt was really great about working with you. The other thing is demonstrations. These allow people to actually see and experience the solution itself. If it's something they can experience directly online, or at least they can watch the process, that's really good proof that it actually exists and you actually do what you're talking about. Social proof as well. This is another concept. We'll define it a little bit more in a second, but such as engagement, shares, and testimonials and reviews online. These kind of things, like seeing that other people are actually interacting with your business and your social posts and your website and commenting or doing anything like that, that helps other people feel like they aren't doing something wrong by taking you up on your offer. The other thing is credentials. So if you have a degree or certifications that prove you have expertise and authority in your field, you should have those listed somewhere easy to find when people are looking you up. And celebrity, if you've got celebrities endorsing your brand, or you've become a celebrity yourself, the sense of know, like, and trust built up between the prospect and the celebrity is often partially transferred to the offer or brand they are endorsing, which means, if you have a celebrity that somebody really respects saying, this company's great, this product is great, this offer is great, you should really buy it, it's going to eliminate a ton of fear in that prospect just by hearing that one endorsement from someone they trust so much. And it's just like a referral from a family member, but celebrities are sometimes pretty powerful if it isn't someone that they directly know, right? Now, we introduced a few words there you may not have been familiar with, and the point of this course here is to make sure everything's clear. So, I'm going to keep jumping into definitions of things. If you already know what they are, I'm sorry. If you don't know what they are, then great. That's the point here. So, social proof is a psychological phenomenon where people assume the actions of others in an attempt to reflect correct behavior in a situation. Now, isn't that a wonderfully confusing way to say, basically, people like monkey see, monkey do? If they see other people sitting in a coffee shop or outside of a restaurant, they think, oh, that must be a popular place, it must be good, I'll go there too. If they see no one sitting at a coffee shop or a restaurant, they're going to go, well, that place must suck, I'm not going to go there either. And the same thing applies to the internet, basically. Now, the other thing is shares, and you probably are familiar with this, but when you have an account on social media platforms like Facebook, you can share posted content or links from the web with your friends, and your friends may be known as followers depending on the platform. Case studies, and this obviously applies outside of digital marketing as well, but a case study in the context of marketing is an analysis of a project, campaign, or company that identifies a situation, recommended solutions, implemented actions, and identification of those factors that contributed to failure or success. Or in a less annoying definition version, basically it's a log or track of basically what you did with a project. You said you were going to do A and B, expecting C outcome. You actually did A, and the outcome you got was actually D, and the reasons were A and B, whatever, right? So it just kind of lets you understand exactly how you accomplished the result, whether it was a failure or success. But really, you want to publish the success stories as case studies that you're using as proof, right? Engagement. You're probably familiar with the term, but basically we're referring to pretty much any interaction with any of your media on the internet, really. But on social media platforms and forums, when somebody posts a comment, shares something, clicks on something, watches something, clicks favorite on something, likes something, or reacts to something, it is considered engagement. So basically any interaction. Any interaction that's visible to other people on the platform or looking at it is the kind of engagement that we like as social proof, right? Now, especially positive engagement. Now, followers, you probably are familiar with the term, of course, but on platforms like YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and many others, or when you create a business profile on Facebook, your profile can have followers, which are other people who've decided to subscribe to the content you post. So the difference between the one thing I want to clear here is on Facebook, you have a personal profile where you sign into Facebook as you and you have friends. And yes, people can follow your personal profile if you let them, but for business purposes, you would create a business page on Facebook, and business pages don't have friends, they have followers. And we'll go deeper into this kind of stuff when we get into the social media module, so don't worry too much if this isn't clear or you want to see some screens and proof and demonstrations of what these things are. I'll do that kind of stuff for you when we get past this initial concept style phase right now. For a moment, I just want to talk about how important it is to have a presence everywhere. It's extremely important that your brand sets up a profile everywhere it can and maintains it, not only so that people who look you up can see you are legit, but also to make sure your brand is discoverable. When your brand is discoverable, it means that people who have not heard of your brand before may easily find or discover it when searching for or browsing content related to your business and products or services. In other words, when people are browsing around on the internet and looking and showing that they have interest in something that you should show up for, it should be possible for them to discover that your brand exists. And the only way to do that is to identify all the different spots and types of things people would be looking at or browsing through where they would probably be interested in what you have to offer, and make sure you have a listing there and whatever content and information you can to help them pay attention to your brand first. So the other thing is recency. It's extremely important that whatever social profiles you have, you post frequently and maintain accurate and recent information. Prospects and customers will look to your social profiles to see if there are any changes in your normal operating hours, new offers or products to check out, and to see if you still seem to be in business in general. So if your content is too old, they may assume you went out of business. Now, the next thing is relevance. The content you post must also be relevant to your audience. It's common to hear about posting cat pictures to get engagement, but if you aren't in an animal or pet-related industry, cat pictures should be a no-no. Stick to delivering content that your customers and prospects will find entertaining, valuable, and on-brand. And by on-brand, we're talking about appropriate to, typical of, consistent with, or supportive of a particular brand or public image or identity. In other words, it makes sense for how you want people to perceive and recognize your company. Okay, so now let's talk about creating an effective web page. This is a pretty critical part of having a web presence that's trustworthy. So let's talk about the criteria of what makes a web page actually effective. So I've got 11 criteria here we're going to go over, and they're pretty basic, and we'll go in the future here. I'll show you another video where I actually critique a website to look at what is and isn't good about it and how it complies with this. So you'll have an example, and I'll also include in the actual web course version of this video a downloadable checklist that you can use against your website if you do have one built in the future, or if you have one already built. And of course, if you do want help with your website, We offer some pretty affordable services where I'll actually build your website for you, or come in and make modifications and fix it up, and do this kind of evaluation for pretty reasonable rates, and you'll get a whole lot better results after doing that. So that's an option for you if you want. Anyway, let's continue here. So the first criteria is it must immediately identify the value that your company provides and who it provides it to. In other words, when someone comes to your website, the first thing they need to see is what exactly are you offering, and why are you offering it, and does it apply to them? If they come to the webpage and have to look around to see if what you offer is something that matters to them, or what you even do, your webpage is going to lose pretty much everybody that comes to the site. Number two is it explains the cost and process of obtaining your products or services. Now, you can't always list the actual prices, but if you explain your rates, or that there is a quotation process, that's enough. But you should also explain how the process works in terms of going from they've never talked to you before to actually obtaining the product or service that you offer. It needs to be very clear, show the steps, make sure there's no guesswork there. If someone's at all fearful that they may not understand how they're going to get your product or service, or what might be involved, or what hoops they might have to jump through, or if the cost is going to be prohibitive, or they're going to feel embarrassed in some way trying to get a quote that they can't, they'll feel obligated to go for, that they can't afford, that's not going to work out very well for you. So you've got to make sure people feel confident that what you're offering is something they can actually obtain, and they understand how they're going to obtain it. Now, the third thing it has to do is explain the unique aspects of your business. What makes your business different from your competitor? What makes what you offer better? What makes you better? And don't just say generic things like we offer good customer service. Try to find real unique value, real unique examples, real ways that you really do outshine and you are different from everybody else. The next thing is it has to make sure that everything that the prospect might be wondering or thinking, or the questions that they have on the top of their mind, they need to very quickly be answered. So you should sit down, get in the headspace of a potential customer that has never hired someone like you before, or bought a product like this before, and think, what are they going to be wondering? What do they want to know? What's on their mind that if you answer very quickly, they'll feel a lot safer continuing and learning more about what you have to offer. That's very important that it's there. The next criteria is that it needs to load fast and look good on all devices. That's like cell phones, like an iPhone or an Android phone, on tablets, on laptops, on big computer monitors. Basically anything that someone might encounter your website on, and a lot of people use mobile these days, it needs to look good. It also needs to accurately reflect the image and voice of your brand. So if you want to be seen as a very professional and polished type company, make sure all of the graphic design, all of the fonts, all of the phrasing, all of the headlines, all of the way that you write your copy reflects that. And it's very important that you stay consistent with your brand's image and voice, or people will suddenly feel like they're talking to someone else, and that the relationship they were already starting to form with you is now broken, and they have to make a new relationship. And that's something you really need to avoid in your copy and the design work for your website. Now, you also need to make sure that your company proves it's legit. And we talked about this a moment ago with reviews and things like that. So make sure that there's examples of testimonials, reviews, case studies, all those things we talked about in the proof section a few seconds ago. Also, make sure it's really easy for people to get in touch with your company and find its social presence on the web. You want phone numbers, address, contact forms, email addresses. If you want to offer a live chat, by all means do. Make sure there's links to all of your social media pages visible from every page of your website. Usually they're just found in the footer at the very bottom of a web page, but they could be elsewhere if they're critical or important to what's going on. And the other thing a website really needs to do is track where visitors come from, their behavior on your website, and what's actually happening with the different people when they're visiting and browsing around. And you can use a tool like Google Analytics to do this. We'll explain a little bit more about that, and eventually we'll actually jump into Google Analytics in a future module, in the optimization module, where I'll show you what to look for and how to understand the reporting in there, or at least understand that it needs to be there, and what to ask for if you have a web developer doing this stuff for you. The other thing is it needs to enable you to advertise to prospects whether or not they provide you with their contact information by using retargeting pixels. Now, I mentioned this in the previous module. We talked about retargeting a little bit, but we're going to dive deeper into this as we go into the advertising modules in the future, but I will explain what a retargeting pixel is in a second. The other point is that it's easy to navigate and never tries to make unrelated points on the same page. So when somebody's looking at a page of your website and consuming content, it needs to stick to that subject. If they need to learn about another subject, you can link to another page that talks about that subject. And as far as navigation is concerned, it must be easy to find the content and take the actions that the person's looking for without having to hunt around or guess or do searches or anything like that. And it needs to work really well on all mobile devices, all desktop devices. And navigation is a very critical factor. If somebody struggles even for a couple of seconds to find the thing they're looking for, they'll just leave. And it's really important that you avoid that, and if you want to keep customers and turn website visitors into money. The last thing is that a website needs to be secure and use a valid SSL certificate. And I'll explain what that is in a second as well. So we did introduce a couple of new terms, and I just want to go over them so that you're not kind of wondering what these things are. The first thing is Google Analytics. So that's also known as Universal Analytics these days. They've kind of added that name to it. But it's a powerful free website traffic analytics suite provided by Google. It allows you to track the origin, behavior, and demographics of visitors to your website, along with track goals like lead acquisition or sales. Basically, it's a reporting dashboard that you log into, you put a little piece of code in your website, or you have your web developer do that, and then it can track what everybody's doing on your web page, where they came from, if they came from Facebook, if they came from a particular email you sent out, if they came from typing it directly into the address bar, or if they found it from Google search or anything like that. That information becomes available to you, so you can see your best sources of traffic to your website. And you can also track things like age and basic demographics of the visitors, what kind of devices they're using, if they're on iPhones or Android phones or desktops, if they're using Windows or Macintosh. All that stuff is available to you within the dashboard. And you can also track where people usually go if they land on a certain if they're landing on your homepage first, or landing in a certain blog article first, or on a landing page on your site first, and where they start visiting from there, and how many pages deep they usually go before dropping off, or going to your contact form, or going through whatever conversion process that you've got in place. And of course, it'll also track what percent of people that land on a certain page or part of your website wind up turning into a lead or a sale or completing any other goals that you have. The other term we introduced here, and we kind of talked about it before, and I'll define it for you now, is a pixel. So a pixel, at least in the marketing world, I'm not talking about the little tiny dots on a display. I'm talking about a marketing pixel. This is actually a piece of JavaScript code. And JavaScript's a programming language you don't need to know, so don't worry about that, which enables the social, ad, or software platform that provides the pixel to track visitor behavior on your website, and potentially enables you to target those visitors based on this behavior. And that's the case of a retargeting pixel. So in other words, Facebook, if you want to advertise through Facebook, or Google, if you want to advertise through Google, they'll give you a little piece of code that you stick on your website, on all the pages of your website, and they can actually track who's coming to those pages and what they're doing on those pages. And if the person happens to be logged in to Google or logged in to Facebook or whatever the platform is, somewhere else on the web, like in the same web browser, which people often are, at least with Facebook and Google, they can actually track that it's one of their users and exactly who that user is, and they can put them into a list for you to select to target with advertisements in the future. So it's a very useful way to advertise to people that come to your website, take certain actions, but never actually give you their contact information. So they wind up otherwise becoming a lost lead if you don't use this. Now, the other term I added there, which is just a little bit more of a concept, SSL certificate. So when you browse a website that uses encryption to protect the information being transmitted between your computer and that website, it's using a technology called secure sockets layers. And you'll know you're on a secure website if there is a lock symbol in the top of the browser and the website address starts with HTTPS rather than HTTP. And so basically what we're talking about here is when you're requesting a website, it's coming from another computer to your computer. So if you visit google.com, Google's got a computer somewhere that actually sends you that web page. And if you type in something into the search bar, you're transmitting what exactly you're typing into that bar back to Google so that they can then do a search and send you back the page of results that you looked for. Now, you'll find sites like banking sites or anything with a login or e-commerce of some sort, some way of making purchases. They use what's called an SSL certificate or a secure socket layer certificate. And this enables the website to encrypt, and encryption is basically just using special algorithms and computer stuff to make sure that anyone looking at that transmission from your computer to Google or to that website and back, they can't actually see what it is you sent and received. They can just see that you made a request, but not what's in the request. So if you punch in your credit card information, they can't actually see that credit card information. So it's a very important thing to have on your website. And in fact, every website, regardless of whether or not it uses e-commerce or has a login, should be using SSL these days, because Google itself has determined that that's a good sign that the website's actually being maintained and is up to date and is secure, and therefore should be a better search result for their users, and therefore also you'll more likely show further up or closer to the top of search results on Google by having an SSL certificate rather than not having one. So an SSL certificate is something you can buy. You can buy them from companies like GoDaddy. They cost quite a bit of money per year, like $100 or something like that. But these days, there's also another company called Let's Encrypt. It's a free kind of social organization that lets you get these SSL certificates for free, so that you can offer this secured version of your website. And you'll just have to talk to your hosting provider or web developer to have that installed for you. Now we need to talk about the concept of user experience. This is a big concept, but the idea is pretty simple. It's all about how a user, like a website visitor, feels while trying to use a medium like your website or a piece of software. Having a good user experience on your website is critical. So in other words, when people are using your website, they come to your website and visit it, they need to feel like it's really easy, it's really clear, they're having a good time, they can consume the information, they can find the information they want, it feels professional, it feels clean, it feels trustworthy. It's how the visitor to your website feels. So let's talk a little bit more about user experience. Let's face it, if people visiting your site can't find what they're looking for, they leave. There's very little chance anyone wants what you offer from you so bad they'll fight to stay on and use your broken, slow, or confusing website. So when it comes to user experience optimization, there's a few categories to look at: speed, compatibility, navigation, information, and actionability. And we're going to dive into these in a second. I just want to reference that user experience optimization. You'll see referenced as UXO on the internet, and it's basically the process of fixing this kind of stuff so that people feel good, and it's a really easy process to use your website or whatever it is they're optimizing. So first I want to go over a bit of detail on how websites actually work. You may already be familiar with building websites, and if so, bear with me. I'm going to go over it for those who aren't sure what terms like hosting, DNS, and HTML mean, and I'm going to explain them in a moment. And then we'll get back to the details of user experience when you have a little bit of a clearer foundation of how websites work, because I think it's pretty important. It's something that will help you as we discuss other elements of internet marketing as we go. So a little bit of a warning here. We're entering a temporary nerd zone, as I'm going to call it. I want you to get vaguely familiar with the essence of the following information. It may be too nerdy for you, and you may never use most of it, but getting this foundational knowledge about how websites work will serve you well in further subjects like email marketing and e-commerce. So bear with me here while I explain a little bit of technical stuff. I'm not expecting you to memorize this stuff though. So we need to talk about the concept of hosting a little bit. So I'm going to give you a bit of a technical background, and like I said, I don't expect you to memorize this. Just a little tiny bit of familiarity in your noggin there is all you really need to get from this. So I'm going to break this down for you here. All right, so let's walk through the process of how a website actually works. So when you decide to visit a website, usually you do so by typing a URL into your web browser. And a URL, also known as a uniform resource locator or web address, is just something like www.something.com. Basically the kinds of things like, you type google.com into the browser. And the browser is your, Chrome or Internet Explorer or Edge browser or Firefox or Safari or whatever browser you use on your computer or your phone or your tablet or whatever. So when you make that request, when you request that URL, you're really asking your internet service provider to look up where a file is stored and retrieve it for you. And your ISP will use a domain name server that keeps record of where domains have been registered. So this may be a little confusing, but basically the terms here that kind of pop up are ISP, which is your internet service provider, which is basically just the company you pay to get a modem and access the internet, usually like your cable company or something like that. And then the other term that comes up here is DNS, or domain name server. And a domain name server are like the internet's equivalent of a phone book. They maintain a directory of domain names and translate them into Internet Protocol addresses, IP addresses. This is necessary because although domain names are easy for people to remember, computers or machines access websites based on IP addresses. And of course, the term domain itself, real internet addresses are actually sets of numbers and letters called an IP or Internet Protocol address. And so when you type in an address that someone has selected, the first part of the address after the protocol is the domain. So if we were to break down a domain or a website address like https:// you can see it right here, https:// onlineadsvictoria.com. The first part, https:// is the protocol, hypertext transport protocol with a secure socket layer add-on. www. is a subdomain, and onlineadsvictoria.com is the actual domain, and the .com part is called a top-level domain, or TLD, and everything after the slash at the end, so if we had more stuff here, that's called a path. So most websites, though, they do have www. Set up to go to the same location as if you didn't have the www. And where exactly the files are hosted, where exactly the files of your website exist, what computer has those files, is actually accessed via a IP address, which is a bunch of numbers. And so instead of you having to remember numbers, you would remember a domain, and exactly what numbers are required to access in order to get to your website are memorized and broadcasted to ISPs via DNS, or domain name servers. This is only going to be relevant later on when we start talking about email marketing and things like that. So just having the idea that you have to buy a domain to have a website, or really you're leasing a domain, and you have to set up a DNS or domain name server records pointing to a host, and we'll go into that a little bit more later. By the way, I apologize for any background noise there. I've got some landscapers doing some work today, so there might be a little bit of shovel sounds in the background or something like that, but hopefully you can still hear me much clearer than the shovel sounds. Anyway, so let me go over this a little bit more now. So at this point, we've got a visitor who punched in yoursite.com in their web browser, which we now know is a domain, and the request goes through their ISP to DNS server, which actually knows where your website is actually hosted, and we'll go over that concept in a minute. And the domain was leased through a registrar, which is where the actual records are maintained and set up for your DNS, and that information is actually copied across to other DNS servers on the web. So when you buy, and really what you're doing is leasing a domain, you get it from a registrar. And this registrar is responsible for identifying where the name server is that contains the master zone file for your domain. When the records are updated in the zone file on the name server associated with your domain, all DNS servers update their records to reflect the change. So basically, it's like updating your local, it's like calling the phone company and saying, hey, put this name associated with this phone number, and then Yellow Pages and all the other directories get told about the change from the phone company, and they make the updates as to where your website exists, type of thing. The DNS servers make the update as to where your website exists. So the term registrar is basically a domain name registrar. They provide domain name registrations to the general public. Of course, you don't actually buy them, you lease them. And the domains themselves are actually owned by registries, which are the people who actually issue the top level domain, like .com or .ca or something like that. So it's not something you really need to worry about any further than the fact that you got to register a domain through a registrar. And the term zone file is basically just the file that the domain name server uses to define the references of different records, such as the IP address of the host where your website files are stored. And we'll go into that a little bit more in a minute. But like I was saying, the zone file is basically just like that master record of what names associated with a phone number, or in this case, what part of your domain or subdomain or domain itself points to what IP address on the internet. Okay, so the visitor has requested the site from their browser, which goes through their ISP, which looks up where the site is located from the DNS record, which was originally set up through the zone file on your registrar, or the domain name server that your registrar has associated with your domain. You can use third-party domain name servers such as Cloudflare, which is a great tool that we'll talk about later on when we get into some more details. So the zone file actually points the request to the hosting server where your website's HTML and other files, or the CMS itself, is stored. And I'll explain exactly what those are in a minute so they're less confusing. So usually to have a website online, usually you pay a company to rent space on their fast and professionally maintained computers that are always online. They're always turned on, they're always connected to the internet. And these kinds of computers that are always online are known as servers. And you pay for this so that you can store your website's files in a way that the public can access. And so the company that you rent this from is your hosting company, and that server is the host of your website. You may not, you may have a host through the actual registrar that you lease your domain through, or maybe a totally different company. But basically, if you have a website, someone's hosting it. Now, the couple of terms that came up here that we should be familiar with, HTML, also known as hypertext markup language, you do not need to remember that, is the language used to lay out web pages in a way that web browsers like Chrome, Firefox, and Safari or Internet Explorer can render. So it's the language that actually decides what font size you have, where something is on a page, if there's a table, if it's going to be in a column in the top, if there's going to be links. It actually tells the browser exactly what exactly this web page looks like, and how to show it to you, and how you can interact with it. So every web page that you receive from browsing around on the internet has some HTML associated with it. And the other term here is CMS. So a content management system, or CMS, is a platform designed to make it easy to design and update the content of a website. Usually a CMS includes an editor that turns what you type and how you format it into HTML code automatically. that kind of editor is usually referred to as a WYSIWYG. Or in other words, what you see is what you get. So as you're modifying things on the screen, it's automatically writing code in HTML and other languages in order for it to look right to the people that try to look at your website. So the most popular CMS software is called WordPress. You've probably heard of it. It's a free platform, and it's really popular because it's really easy to use. It's free, and there's a lot of things that can be added to it, either for free or for a few bucks, that give you really powerful custom functionality. And there's also a lot of pre-built looks and what are called themes for websites that you can buy, and then you can just kind of punch in your own content and it looks like a professional website, and then it's easy for you to update. So most websites these days are built using CMS of some sort rather than directly in HTML, but those CMS systems actually output HTML. So basically at this point, that request gets all the way to the server, and the server spits back that HTML and whatever other information it needs to back to the browser, and the visitor can see the web page. So that's how websites actually work from a more technical standpoint. And now we can exit this nerd zone and get back to user experience. So like I said, I'm sorry about the nerd zone. I'll try to minimize those, but now we can get back to user experience for your trustworthy web presence. And let's start with speed. So if you already have a website, the first thing to do is scan your site to look for obvious issues that may make it slow. And one of the best tools for doing that, which is free, is gtmetrics.com. And I've got nothing to do with them, but it's just a tool I like to use, so check it out if you want. It makes it very clear, at least for your developer or someone a little bit more tech savvy, exactly what needs to be done to speed up your website. Now remember, if your website's slow, people are going to get pissed off and they're not going to wait around, and they're just going to leave and do something else. So you have to have a fast website. Now on top of the list of items GTmetrix says to fix, you may find you need to utilize faster or more powerful hosting and optimize some of the backend systems and code in your website, or basically have your web developer do that for you. You'll find that the more complex a website is, the more traffic it gets and the more functionality in it, the more images and things like that, the slower the website gets, and the more computing power that is needed to actually serve that website fast. So you might need a more expensive hosting plan, which gives you more power. Now, I'm not going to deep dive into exactly how to fix things on a GTmetrix list or anything like that. That's way beyond the scope of this course. That's getting really technical, and I've already kind of probably bored you with a bit of too much technical stuff, so I'm going to try to get away from that and go back to higher level concepts. But if you do need help with your website, reach out to me, eric@onthegridmedia.com. I'm happy to help you with this stuff. I do it all day, every day. So, compatibility. Now, assuming that your site actually loads fast, does it load properly? I mentioned earlier that you should check your analytics data to determine the types of devices people are visiting your site with. But you can pretty much assume that you must make your website work on the major browsers. Something like Internet Explorer, Chrome, Firefox, and Safari on all major resolutions, and mobile devices like Chrome and Safari on iPhone 5 size, iPad Pro, iPad, iPhone 10, whatever the latest devices are, and all the top market share devices. So you should probably Google around to see what the latest screen resolutions are for as far as market share, and make sure everything works on that. There's lots of tools for testing this, such as crossbrowsertesting.com. Again, it's just one I've used. There's tons of them out there. I don't necessarily recommend them over anyone else, but it's easy to remember. And I highly suggest that you actually test your site on all of the computers and devices that you can get your hands on, because even with these online site testing platforms like cross-browser testing, nothing beats testing it with a real device. Now, if you find there is an issue with rendering any part of your site or funnels on any major device or resolution, you'll want a web developer to resolve it immediately. This will impact people's level of trust, their user experience, their willingness to go further with your business. So it's something that needs to be fixed quickly. And like I said, I can help you with that if needed. Now, The term resolution came up there, and you may or may not be totally familiar with it. If you bought TVs, you've heard of 1080p, 4K, things like that. That's referring to resolution. So basically, a screen resolution of a monitor or television, mobile device, basically any display device, is the number of pixels in X and Y dimensions. So the screen resolution is generally measured as width by height in pixels. For example, 1920 by 1080 means 1920 pixels wide and 1080 pixels high, which in this case is 1080p resolution. Now, the higher the resolution, the sharper the image and more detail displayed. Typically, larger devices have higher display resolutions. Now, and when you're talking about websites, we often design and test them on multiple resolutions. Those are the most popular phones, tablets, and computers displays. And if you make a website that automatically adjusts itself to different screen sizes, it's called being responsive. And we'll dive into more examples of that kind of stuff when we get later into more technical implementation stuff in future modules. Now, the other critical part of your website is navigation. This is where things get a little bit subjective, and the proper use of user experience testing and research techniques can help. So making sure your website is really easy for people to access the information they want immediately is very critical. But not everybody thinks like you, right? And many won't know your lingo. So it's often best to ensure navigation flows by persona, symptom, problem and goal, solution category, as well as enabling things like search engines on your website, FAQs, and a knowledge base. But before building your site, you may want to take advantage of something called a card sort. This is a very simple technique where you write down every page or subject on a separate card, or use some online software to do this for you, and organize the cards into logical piles by navigation heading and category. And now, if you hand sort the piles and you hand those to someone and ask them to find a few random subjects or pages that you list, you basically want to look to see if whether or not they're able to guess which pile it's in correctly from the get-go. Because if you're sorting navigation headings in a way that people aren't able to properly guess where the page that they want is under them, you're going to have problems with people trying to find content on your site, and they're going to get frustrated. So if they can't ask them, or if they can't find the content, you can ask them to resort the piles and explain their reasoning. Now, you want to do this with a few times, with a few people, and see how you can create a navigation structure that accommodates most, if not all, of your subject's mindsets. But remember, it's okay to have more than one route to a page. You can actually list the same page under multiple headings if you're finding a lot of people are thinking one way or the other to get to that page. Now, if your site is already up and running, you may want to have a few people run the same kind of test and have them sit in front of your site. Try both on a computer and mobile device and have them find pages by topic or goal. If they struggle, you'll want to try and understand their thought process and see how you can adjust the navigation to accommodate. Another awesome option if your site's already running is to install a system like Hotjar. And this will let you record sessions of your visitors on the site. You'll be able to see exactly what they see and how they actually interact with their pages, where they move their mouse, where they click, things like that. And you'll be able to see these people that you're asking to find things, how they actually eventually get to what you've asked them to find, and what things they try to look at first. And it's a really great way to optimize the user experience and navigation of your site. Now, on top of being able to find the right link, it's also very important that the page the link goes to identifies itself. If someone clicks a link expecting a page about a certain topic, the headline and graphics need to clearly indicate that they are on the right page, or they're in the right place. If you click through to a page on how to grow amazing apples, and you click on that page and it shows a bunch of pictures of bananas or random generic images, you're going to wonder, am I actually on the right page, right? And you don't want that feeling of concern going into your visitor's mind. Now, we did throw a few random terms at you there. So just to make sure all of these are clear, and you probably know some of these, the term FAQ, or frequently asked questions, are usually a list of the most commonly asked questions about a company, product, or service, and surrounding topics, fulfillment details, payment and shipping details, return, exchange, refund details, etc., with direct answers listed right under the question. The term knowledge base, it's a centralized repository where information is stored, organized, and shared. This is a system that, when used externally, when used facing the public, customers can go learn anything about your organization or your products or services or even industry that they want. It should be basically a hub of everything you know, and it should be easy to navigate and find. And there's lots of good programs for implementing this. Just Google knowledge base software and you'll find a bunch. Now, Hotjar, I'm not going to describe every tool or company or tool that I mentioned in here, but Hotjar is one that I use quite a bit, and it's a software as a service, also known as SaaS platform, that records user behavior on your website. It can be used to watch how users interact with your web page, and it records their mouse and scrolling actions so that you can actually see where people go and how they interact. So this is a useful tool that I would use. There's quite a few other ones out there as well, but Hotjar is just one of the ones I use a lot, so I figured I'd mention it. And then the term session, just to be clear, a session is a group of user interactions with your website that take place within a given time frame. For example, a single session can contain multiple page views, events, social interactions, and e-commerce transactions. So basically, a session is kind of the time that someone spends on your website in one kind of sitting or one experience. Now, the information on your website, just like the navigation itself, it can be a little bit tricky to get right. You need to make sure that you really understand your market. If your site isn't clear about who you are, what you do, who it's for, why they should care, and how your product or service benefits the visitor and functions to do so, the visitor will leave. You'll want to ensure that you have at least some basic pages or sections on your site, such as an About section, which should include the people behind the company's mission, vision, and some background information and story to help your visitor get to know you and your brand a little bit more. And services and products, if you don't list what you sell and do, people will get frustrated. There's really no point in your website if you don't do this. Frequently asked questions, or FAQ, you do need to address the common questions and concerns of your market, and you must have contact information on your site. How do people get in touch with you? On top of those 4 basic elements, though, having content that speaks directly to your customers' individual situation and desires is key to driving engagement. Creating valuable blogs and articles around specific topics of interest to your market, ensuring you tie back that content to some sort of offer, will help your visitors experience some upfront value, get a sense that you understand and know them, and understand what you have to offer. So don't hide that you have something to sell. Just make sure you give the user a chance. Just make sure you give the user a chance to experience some value and get to know you and understand what it is you're selling, why it matters to them, and how it works. Now, if you're unsure what topics your visitors want to know about, the easiest thing to do is spend a few hours doing some market research. Look at your competitors' FAQs, their messaging, their ads, what blog topics they write about. Look at your reviews and testimonials and those of your competitors and related companies in your market for common themes and concerns. Look at social media comments on your pages and those of your competitors and related companies to see what problems and questions come up. Google for top blogs in your niche or market and see what companies and comments come up on the most popular ones. Use tools like Keywords Everywhere to search for, to see what kind of search volume is out there for related topics. We'll get into that later, and I'll show you that tool when we get into the search engine module, because it's a pretty neat little free tool that shows you kind of how many people are actually actively looking for something to see if there's any actual demand for it. But I'll show you that later. Talk to your customers, run surveys, ask your sales staff. You really can't skip market research. If you don't know what motivates and holds back your customers, you can't address them with the right messaging to make sales. Now, the term messaging might be a little bit unclear to you, so I figured I'd define it here. In marketing, the term messaging refers to how an organization talks about itself and the value it provides. Related to positioning, messaging is an approved set of key points or messages an organization uses to communicate about something with a target audience. In other words, it's basically the way that you describe your company and the value of your company, what you do, and the value of the products and services, and basically how you actually talk about your services and what you're offering. Now, actionability. So convenience is coveted by today's consumers. If you don't make it extraordinarily easy to buy from you, many just won't. Whenever possible, direct e-commerce, live chat, and/or online appointment scheduling should be available to make the process fast and simple. This also means that whenever you create content that relates to a product or service, you need to present an immediately actionable offer. When a prospect gets excited and interested in buying, it better be easy and obvious what to do next. So using systems like Hotjar will help you watch visitors as they interact with your website and sales systems to ensure that they don't stumble. And utilizing retargeting and triggered email sequences to bring people back is critical to leveraging the most value from your traffic. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about your offer, the actual concept of crafting a really good offer and whatnot. We'll get into a little bit more in the funnel phase, which is the next module. But we will talk about the offer right now because it is something to make sure you're clear about. If you're doing anything without having real clarity about your offer, it's probably going to be the point that breaks down everything you try to do. So one of the most common and overlooked problems is that business owners just assume that people want what they're selling. So take the time to evaluate how your offer fits within your market, the level of demand for what you're selling, and how your competition is selling. You need to be able to clearly and concisely answer these three questions. Who sells what you sell and how are they selling it? Who buys what you sell and why do they buy it? And why should they buy it from you? If you can't answer those three questions clearly and concisely, then you don't understand your offer or your market. And it's very critical to get those answers clear. Now, take the time to read your competitors' reviews and testimonials, as well as their social posts, the comments on them, their ads, their headlines, and list out the three most common themes in your competitors' headlines. How your competitors position themselves, what their USPs are, what their value propositions are, what people say in their testimonials, top ads by your competitors, whatever's been running the longest and most frequent is probably making the money, so the best ones to look at, and sites your competition is actually advertising on. You can get a sense of your market demographics using tools like Facebook Audience Insights, Alexa, AdBeats, and many other, but it's the research into the common problems and motivations that will help you craft messaging in a way that your customers identify with. If your offer is affordable and valuable, addresses real problems, it's authentic, and people actually do buy it, then you're probably okay from these standpoints. But just make sure your sales material have the basic elements of a good sales presentation, a promise to solve something that matters, risk reversal or a guarantee, emotional connectivity between the benefits of your solution and the ultimate transformation and desire of your prospect, a clear, irresistible, high-value offer, solid answers to objections, and a direct call to action as well as proof. Now, I threw a few terms at you here, and we are going to clarify a lot of what I was just talking about with real examples as we go through the funnel module and actually craft some of these things as examples. But basically, the term USP is a unique selling proposition. Sometimes people think of it as a unique selling point. Doesn't matter. Interchangeable. It's a factor that differentiates a product from its competitors, such as the lowest cost, highest quality, the first ever product of its kind. A USP could be thought of as what you have that your competitors don't. And another term we threw at you here was value proposition. A value proposition refers to the value a company promises to deliver to customers and should they choose to buy their product. So basically a value proposition is how you describe what your products are delivering, what your service is delivering, what your customers are actually going to get out of doing business with you and buying what you have to sell. And then the concept of risk reversal. Well, when a sale is made, somebody takes a risk, either the seller or the buyer. Either the buyer risks their money and that they may not receive the value they expected for it, or the seller can take on the risk and that they provide a guarantee or way of assuring the buyer will not be at a loss in any circumstance. So if you do this using a guarantee such as you're satisfied or your money back. This is the concept of risk reversal. You're reversing the risk of the purchase and making it so that you're taking on the risk rather than the buyer. And this is a very important thing, especially for anything of any kind of like higher monetary denomination, any serious commitment, anything that people may be unclear about. So this is a very important concept to take advantage of. Now, we're going to kind of end this module here. I'm just going to quickly wrap up how you can kind of take a look to see that you have a trustworthy web presence and what kind of little things you could do to put that together and fill in some gaps. So if you do have traffic running to your website and your site is optimized, it's navigable, you know you have a good offer, it's probably something like trust that's holding back your sales. And the first thing you should do is evaluate how trustworthy you and your brand look on the web. Do you have a good quantity of recent high quality positive reviews on multiple platforms? See, a few non-perfect reviews are fine and actually lend a bit to a sense of that your reviews are real. Because sometimes, if you have just a whole bunch of 5-star reviews, it kind of looks fake. But never use fake testimonials or reviews, and don't let reviews go stale. You need to keep asking customers to leave you feedback across your multiple channels. You want feedback on your Google My Business page. You want feedback in testimonials you can put on your website. You want feedback on social media. You want these reviews to constantly be coming in and looking new and looking fresh. Now, are you actually active on multiple platforms, publishing engaging and quality content? You need to be posting on major social networks and responding to comments. So it's also very important to do that. If people are commenting or asking you things on your social media, like if they're commenting on your post or they're messaging you on your pages or anything like that, it's very important to respond and do everything you can to acknowledge they're there and you appreciate them interacting with you, and do everything you can to make them feel special, appreciated, and answer their questions. Do you respond to reviews and comments? So, like I said, not just comments on social, but if somebody posts a review, positive or negative, jumping in and saying thank you, and saying, I appreciate your feedback. I'd love to help you. If it's a negative comment, please reach out to me and give them some way to reach out to you so you can try to help them resolve. That really goes a long way to looking really good if people do see a negative review and shows that you care. And the people seeing that you are responding to positive reviews is going to make them more likely to leave you a positive review if they work with you, because they'll feel like you actually pay attention and appreciate it. Now, do you update your profiles and websites regularly with new valuable content? Outdated or incorrect information or lack of activity makes it look like you abandoned your business, and you really don't want that. If somebody thinks you're out of business or you just gave up on updating things, they'll just go to a competitor that looks active. There's no reason for someone to try to push through any doubt in their mind to deal with you, because there's probably another 100 people offering exactly what you offer right listed next to you in a Google search result. So you really need to make sure you're paying attention to this kind of stuff. And the next thing is to ensure you are placing proof where it matters most, within your offer and funnel, as well as your ads themselves. So can people actually see who you are? Post your information, your story, the background of your company, the background of your career and how you got to where you are and what you're doing. Add photos and videos to help people get to know, like, and trust you. People want to see your face. People want to hear from you in your own voice. Can you watch or see testimonials from real customers? If you can get customers to provide you reviews and testimonials, especially in video format or something like that, that really helps people believe that we've got something of value that they should take advantage of. Do you demonstrate how your product delivers the results you promise? You need to make sure you create either a video that illustrates this, a sequence of photos or something like that, or actually a demo of some sort that people can experience. Are you credentialed or an authority in your market? And if so, make sure that's visible. If you're, a professor or a doctor, or you've got a degree of some sort or any kind of certifications, post those credentials on your website in the about section, about you, that kind of thing, or right in any sales page where people are kind of might be on the fence deciding whether or not to buy from you, confirming for them as part of the sales process, as part of the content on that sales page, that you are credentialed, you do have this background, is very important. Get recommendations from other people, get people to refer people to you, and give you kind of testimonials or letters of recommendation that you can post publicly. Create authoritative content, so publish things that show you really know more than the average person about the subject that you're, or the industry that you're working in. Or you can rely on testimonials and other proof if you don't have that kind of stuff. But make sure you got something out there. Okay, so I could go on forever and ever about different types of reviews and different, advanced things about websites and stuff like that. But this has already been a pretty long module, and we've covered a lot of stuff. I recommend that if you didn't take notes, you go back and rewatch this or read the transcript, and which is posted in the online course version of this. If you're seeing this as a share on social media, then you should be clicking over and signing up for the course, where it has more materials, like the you'll see on the page. If you are in the course, it's got the other videos on website optimization and checklists and downloads and transcripts and things like that. So hopefully at this point you find this valuable so far. You're starting to get a better picture of kind of how you need to be out there, really visible as to who you are, who's behind the company, exactly what the company does for who, proof of that, proof of previous customers, the fact that you're posting stuff that's new and relevant and engaging, and you're getting reactions from other people, you're getting you're making sure everything's nice and easy to navigate and find. You're making sure that everywhere someone could possibly be looking for you, you're there with up-to-date branded profile that points them in the right direction to keep working with you. It's just really important to have that presence. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of people that that if you do get them to notice you somehow, maybe with social media or an ad or something like that, if they go to look you up, they might be disappointed and turn away. And you're also going to obviously, if you don't have this kind of stuff, be missing out on the tons and tons of people that would be interacting with you, getting more value out of you, getting to know, like, and trust you, and engaging with your brand and following what you're doing and buying from you. So this is a really, really important step, a really critical part of this. The market research part that I talked about is absolutely critical. It's very time consuming if you don't want to do any of this stuff, but you want this to exist for you. We do this for you I'll do this for you, and my team will help do it at a fairly reasonable rate, which makes it nice and easy. And we kind of put it all together, show you the whole market, set up your website, fix your website, whatever needs to happen, create whatever directory listings we need to, get a hold of your previous clients if we need to, ask for testimonials. We'll do all that stuff for you. So if you are starting to think about, well, I can see how this all works. I can see how being visible, being found, being, having proof out there, engaging with people is going to create more referrals, more traffic, more customers for your company. If you're starting to see this, you're starting to make sense to you now, especially why some people charge quite a bit of money to build all this stuff out for you and things like that. If it's starting to make sense that there is quite a lot of steps and components to this, it's a lot more than just putting up a random fancy brochure looking type web page and hoping people come to it because you've set up a Google listing with your phone number. It's not going to work that simply. So if you do want some help with this stuff, by all means reach out. OnlineAdsVictoria.com is one way to get us to start. We'll even include a bit of this market research in that offer, and that's a risk-free. We have a guarantee. We've got that whole risk reversal thing in there for you, like we just described that you should have. But you can also check us out at On the Grid Media. Make sure you're following me on my Facebook page and YouTube, where I'll post a lot more of this kind of stuff. And of course, if you're in the course right now, you'll see the next module, if it's released, it should be released fairly shortly. If not, because I'm trying to release these once every day or two. So if you can't see the next module, just hang on. I'll send you an email when it's there. Otherwise, click through, move on. Also check out the other resources listed on the page. And if you're seeing this on social media, I should also have a link there for you where you can actually go register for the whole course and see all the modules and keep track of your progress and get the other resources and stuff. So thanks. I hope this is helping you out. I hope you're starting to get clear. Don't worry if anything, any of that technical stuff we went over, any of this market research stuff, any of these things are seeming a little bit unclear still, because this is still kind of just downloading the concepts, just getting you kind of vaguely familiar with all these components. And as we dive deep into examples of putting these things together, you'll understand all this stuff a lot better. It'll all become a lot clearer, because I'll eventually jump right into the web and show you web pages and examples, and show you examples of copies. So don't worry, as we move forward, all this stuff will get clearer. You may want to rewatch it, like I said, and check out the other resources on this page. Thanks so much for being with me.